difference here. Then the topic of our paper is Comparative Law Review of the Election System of the U.S.A. We're finding implication of Korean election system, in particular regarding entry barriers for new politicians. Introduction. The portion of newly elected members of Korean National Assembly is higher than that of the U.S. beyond comparison. In U.S., in 2016, for example, only 8 among the 387 serving members of the House of Representatives failed to get re-elected to show 98% of re-election rate. On the other hand, in Korea, the proportion of the newly elected members of 19th and 20th Korean National Assembly election were both higher than 40%. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
And in U.S., there are no official restrictions for new politicians to enter the field. However, various features of the political and electoral systems in U.S. make the entry harder for newcomers. Most of all, there have been incompatible incumbency advantages in U.S., which are the benefits in elections enjoyed by an individual serving member rather than his or her political party. Moreover, the majority representation system in U.S. and the bipartisan gerrymandering favorable for serving members restrict the newly elected politicians' chance of winning. So the goal of this paper is this article tries to suggest ways to improve the Korean election system by lowering the entry barriers of rising politicians in Korea, which currently adopts the majority representation system, the limited proportional representation system, through the comparative study of election system, which functions as an entry barriers to new politicians in U.S. Although there are a number of quality of studies on the incumbency factors of the members of the Korean National Assembly and incumbency factors and gerrymandering in U.S., this paper is a comparative law review on how the majority representative system with redistricting power in the hand of incumbent members of the legislature functions as an entry barrier for rising politicians. So we are going to review U.S. and Korean election system which are functioning as barriers for new politicians. We are going to compare the proportions of newly elected members of the Korean National Assembly and U.S. House of Representatives in the example. Although the proportion of newly elected members of the 20th Korean National Assembly was reduced slightly from that of the 19th election, the analysis of the result of the general election on April 13th reveals that the number of newly elected members are 132 among 300 members, composing 44% of the assembly. On the other hand, in U.S., from 1946 to 2014, only 1.6% among the serving members who ran for the re-election failed in the primary, and only 6% were defeated in the general election in the U.S. The re-election rate of the senators fluctuated every year, while only 55% of the serving members got re-elected in 1980, and that's a pretty low number. For example, the rate was far higher than that of the success rates of the serving members of the House of Representatives in 1982, 1990, and 2012. Well, mostly House of Representatives members are re-elected over 90%. Despite some exceptions, the re-election rate increased roughly as time passed. The advantage in incumbent holds over a challenger in a given election is frequently cited in political theory, and its impetus frequently debated. So data compiled by OpenSecret.org shows the election rate for incumbents in the U.S. House of Representatives has been 85% or higher for each of the 27 two-year election cycles that occurred between 1964 and 2016, and that from 2006 to 2016, the re-election rate averaged 92.5%. And the reason of a higher rate of newly elected representatives in Korea, that's not because we don't have entry barriers for newcomers, but rather there are things to be improved. The reason for the above differences is not because the entry barrier for coming politicians in Korea is lower than that of the U.S. When classified into groups by the number of times getting elected, 1,172 among the 2,119 assembly members of all time were elected only once, while 489 were elected twice, and 458 three times. This shows that even after getting elected for the first time, the new politician has little possibility of getting re-elected or even being nominated. Although Korean people in general are eager to defeat serving members in a way to bring them into political judgment, but people are actually bringing down new politicians unintentionally. The reason of a high ratio of newly elected members in Korean National Assembly can be said to be a top-down way of nomination, resulting from the centralized political party system and the close alliance between the president and the party leaders. Currently, Korea is running an election system combining the majority representation system and a limited proportional representation system. Also, there are discussions underway between politicians and parties to introduce mixed member proportional representation system in electing National Assembly members. However, currently, the votes for political parties are evaluated only for the 14 seats of the National Assembly, which does not comprise more than 17% of the seats. It makes the Korean election system to be a relative majority representation system. So we are now going to review the comparison of the entry barriers in U.S. and after that we are going to review the entry barriers of newcomers in Korea. The primary system and the primary election system and the majority representative system serving as entry barriers in U.S. election system. It's said that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, the two major political parties in the U.S., have divided and dominated the American politics since 1860s. The way to elect federal and state lawmakers is based on the single-member electoral system, where the candidate who earned the most votes from a certain district wins the election. Although some states require a majority vote, most of them decide elected by largest number, whether that's a majority or not. Unlike the proportional representative system in Korea, in example Germany, the single-member electoral system allows only one party to turn out the elected in a given district. Therefore, under the single-member electoral system, a national party which has the popular preferences along with administrative and financial abilities to win the largest votes in all of the districts is required, while candidates from minor political parties suffer disadvantages. So the winner-take-all system in the U.S. makes it difficult for newly entering political parties and newly entering political candidates to win an election and exercise a certain amount of influence in the houses. Also, the eligibility for election varies from state to state because America is a federal country. Some states require only a small cost for candidacy and allow basically everyone to run for the election. The other states demand a large sum of money or a certain number of petitions for candidacy. So the winner-take-all system, and along with the financial burdens imposed on the candidate state by state, and the petitions required state by state is favorable for the serving members as well, rather than increasing the chance of a rising politician to win the election. Also, bipartisan gerrymandering, also it's called incumbent gerrymandering, because gerrymandering is favoring incumbents in the members of the House of Representatives or Senators. So generally, the right of redistricting belongs to the state legislature. Even though that's federal election, the redistricting right belongs to the state legislature. Sometimes the state legislature suppresses competition in elections by redistricting favorably for the serving members of the two major parties. In other words, they sometimes redistrict to ensure safe number of seats for the two major political parties. The greatest amongst recent examples can be found in California. redistricting bills from 2000 to 2010 approved by the Democratic and the Republican parties, both parties, left actually non-competitive among 53 assembly districts. Only one of the 265 assembly districts experienced a replacement of political parties in the elections from 2002 to 2010. Californians made the constituencies demarcated by Byzantine process. Byzantine process is citizens committee takes the charge of redistricting without political considerations. That's Byzantine process by a proposition. Proposition is the way of citizen lawmaking in U.S. So citizens propose a law and they pass the law in the legislature. And among the various restrictions during the redistricting for the 2012 election was prohibiting the Citizens Committee to consider the party registration status, aspects of voting, current serving members. In fact, the demarcation by this committee created about 10 competitive seats potentially. However, given that the voters of California are reclining to the Democratic Party, for the recent 10 years, the seats won by the Democratic Party and the seats before and after the demarcation of a constituency by the Citizens Committee were not really different. The increase in the number of competitive districts were entirely favorable to the Democratic Party. In this way, the bipartisan gerrymandering in U.S. to reduce competition became favorable to the serving members, and there are lots of experiences or proposals going on to reform this bipartisan gerrymandering, for example, by introducing Byzantine process, but it's not really working yet. And we are going to review the Korean election system. In Korea, where a limited version of the proportional representation system is underway, the single-member majority representation system serves as an entry barrier for coming politicians, along with various restrictions in the election campaigns. While the duration and methods of election campaign are excessively restricted, routine political and legislative activities of serving members are permitted, even though these cannot but affect the election. This, in effect, hinders the new politicians' chance in challenging current members. Also, the maturity in the democratization and decentralization of political parties will serve as entry barriers for rising politicians. And this table shows the types of nominations in the 28th general election, 1916 election. So, Century Party candidates were nominated by primary election. That's only like 56.45%, and Democratic Party candidate was nominated about 23.93% of the Democratic Party candidates were nominated in primary elections, and the People's Party is 국민당, yeah, and then they're only 18%, above 80% of candidates from the People's Party were nominated in primary elections, and others indicate like usually the influence of political leaders in their parties, and then also the president as well. So Korea has an independent institution called Constituency Demarcation Committee for the National Assembly members. Public Official Election Act adopts legalism in demarcating constituencies by defining the establishment and operation of the committee to demarcate constituencies by defining the establishment and operation of the committee to demarcate constituency vary according to acceptable objective standards when demarcating constituencies for National Assembly members and the city do council members. The committee is installed under the Central Election Management Committee and excludes National Assembly members and members of political parties, including people who were members of political parties for the past year from the date of the committee's installation, and from its membership for the neutrality and fairness of the demarcation. Also, city to council members and members of political parties cannot be a member of the city to constituency demarcation committee. However, ignoring the agreement on excluding party recommendation to ensure the committee's independence, the ruling and the opposition parties allowed themselves to exercise right to consent or veto to a certain candidate recommended by all levels of society through the Special Committee of Political Reformation. As a result, the demarcation committee in Korea was imposed politicality of the ruling party and the opposition party by 4-4 proportion. Therefore, also improvement in constituency demarcation committee is needed to make it operate independently as well. And how about incumbent gerrymandering in Korea? The standard for demarcating constituencies should be defined clearly in the law for the committee to refer to when redistricting, but it's not done well. And the Constitutional Court, in its judicial precedent, ruled that if the intention of the state power and the substantial discriminatory effect against voters of a certain area are obvious by proving that the voters of a certain area lost their opportunities to participate in the political procedures due to arbitrary demarcation, or that they are being deprived of the possibility of electing the candidates they support. That is, if the case falls into the category of gerrymandering, the redistricting is beyond legislative discretion and is going to be found a breach of Constitution. And it also ruled that without special unavoidable circumstances in considering the social, geographical, historical, economic, and administrative relations and the zone of life, that's administrative zone, whether the adjacent areas compose one constituency should be the basic principle in deciding gerrymandering. That's the holding of the Constitutional Court. However, there have been no cases found unconstitutional due to gerrymandering until now. So in Korea, we don't consider like we had case of unconstitutional gerrymandering. So it's not like complete conclusion, and then the studies and then the data and research should be added more, and then it's going to be in the published article. But the intelligent conclusion is, although there are no restrictions on the duration of expenses of election campaigns in the U.S., the winner-take-all single-member electoral system, primary election system, and particularly notorious gerrymandering, along with various incumbent factors, exist as entry barriers for political novices. In Korea, a number of incumbent factors and advantages combined with the immature democratization and decentralization of political parties and the election system favorable for serving members function as entry barriers for rising politicians. So considering the democratic influence of party leaders and the president and nominated candidates, even if it is not possible for the serving members to redistrict the current constituencies favorable to themselves, it is essential to reform the majority representation system based on single-member electoral system by introducing mixed-member proportional representation, while improving the necessary restriction on election campaigns serving as an entry barrier for coming politicians. And also, I didn't add in this conclusion, the demarcation committee need to be function independently from the party's influence as well. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much.